We are here tonight, as you know, to talk about master planning and visioning for the middle school and the high school. I just wanted to welcome all of you. Thank you so much for coming out. We know it's hard to do that in the evenings when so many other activities are going on, so we really appreciate you taking the time. We just wanted to go over the format for tonight a little bit, and then I will hand it over to Doran Whittier. So we are going to talk a little bit. Doran Whittier are going to make a presentation tonight, a very condensed one. So some of you have seen the presentation a few times. They're going to condense the part a little bit about the timeline and some of the studies tonight and talk a little bit about where we are in terms of design so far and what's been done and what's not been done and what's to come in the future. Once they've made their presentation, we're going to split into two groups. So Rob is going to take one group and Lee will take the other, and they will have Post-it notes and big Post-it notes so they can take notes and questions and all of that. And we'll try to answer some questions, but also take on board questions if we don't have answers for those yet, and as well as comments, not just questions. And then we're hoping at the end to have a little wrap-up session. So maybe someone from the group, or maybe Rob or Lee, will report out for each group sort of the main themes of the discussion in those groups. So that's kind of how we're thinking the night will go. We'll try to keep it precisely to 2 hours and really sort of focus mostly on listening. That's why we're here. So I'll be wandering around, and David Young is here, and Gary Marcus, some of the district staff are here, and we'll be wandering around listening and participating ourselves as well. So with that, I will hand it over to Rob.
Thanks, Bridget. So we'll start off with just an overview of where we've been to get to where we are. This has been an ongoing study for a number of years, even going back further than this to 2008 when previous studies have been done. But 2014, there was a school and community master planning study, which then pushed into a master plan study focusing on the elementary schools. 2017, the decision was made to focus primarily on the middle and high school through a two-phase master planning study. And that first phase was the physical building aspects of both the middle school and the high school. And then phase two looked at, how does education actually work within both of those buildings? So those are two very different things. And then where we are, that brings us to where we are today, which is in this pre-bond vote phase, reviewing a new middle high school in the early schematic design phase. So just touching on phase one, we reviewed the South Burlington High School, approximately 151,000 square feet. And what we found, we brought through a team of architects and engineers, walked through each of the buildings inside and out on the roof, checked out the mechanical systems. And what we found is actually very similar to what we see in a lot of schools around the country. Actually built in the 1960s. This was built in 1960 with additions in 77 and 78. And while the school district has been doing a good job of maintaining the buildings, there are aging infrastructure components. So, for example, the mechanical systems are original. This is a pneumatic compressor which pushes air through to control the heat and cold. That's original to the building, so it's quite old. I believe there's one guy in the state of Vermont that knows how to maintain those. This is a very large hot water tank. This is an original electrical panel system. Many of the parts and components are not made anymore. There are some various aspects of the building that, like, some of the windows have been replaced, but there are still some others that still need to be replaced. Roofing systems, some of them have been replaced, but others are still in need of replacement. So, when you look at it in the bigger picture, there are still many, many infrastructure components that need to be addressed. Looking at the middle school, we kind of found a similar condition. So, the middle school was constructed in 67, 68. And again, original electrical panels, original casework that don't meet handicap accessibility. We found extensive handicap accessibility issues throughout both buildings. Original locker showers, original HVAC systems. You can see on the exterior, there's deterioration, which is expected with the severe Vermont winters that we have here. The roof needs a replacement. There's some shrinking here that's pulling away some of the brick, and windows are original as well. But it's not only the building, it's the site as well that has issues. So when you, as many of you that have been here during pickup and drop-off times, it's pretty congested. Here in yellow is the bus drop-off. Here are parent drop-off, and this is student parking. So you can see that this area right here gets pretty heavily congested, and this is a very short bus loop for the number of buses that serve the high school and the middle school. I believe there's 23 buses. Looking at the other parking lot, so here we have a different condition. There is a bus loop here, but the parents in green here come around straight through this parking lot. And so in a straight pass-through, sometimes there's people crossing back and forth through the parking lot, which makes it a hazardous condition. So you've got buses, you've got cars, you've got pedestrians. So this is also an unsafe condition at mornings and the afternoons, as well as throughout the day. So looking at enrollment projections, we, contrary to the rest of the state of Vermont, Chittenden County is actually increasing in population, and that's reflected here in these enrollment projections from both the middle school and the high school. Over the next 10 years, both have increasing enrollments. So when we did an analysis of the capacity of both buildings in a number of different ways, and one of them was just overall footprint of the building. So when we look at the middle school, we look at the overall footprint and found that while they are tight in some areas on the size of some of the spaces, like the classrooms and the gym and things like that, the overall footprint, there's still some room. They're just not being used in the way that they would like to use them educationally, because education has changed since 1967. And at the high school, we see a different story. We see an overcrowding condition where the school is just undersized for the number of students that are attending, and the 10-year enrollment projections really exacerbate that. So looking back, Mr. Burke's got a nice little binder of original clippings from when the building was built in 1960, 61. And it was a very different time then. This is a time when, young ladies were, talking about homemaking. It was a new time then, because this was a brand new building for South Burlington. But as you can see, this is before man landed on the moon. So this just reflects the industrial age of education. Back then it was all about teachers standing in the front of the building. In front of the classroom, lecturing to students in rows. It was all about memorization, and this is a floor plan of the high school, in 1960, and this was the idea. Get as many students into the building, have the teacher, explain the facts, have students memorize them, take a test, and then they go into the next class. So that was the stand and deliver method. Special education was not around then. It wasn't integrated anywhere. In fact, they actually sent students off-site to other schools or other buildings. Remedial assistance, project-based learning, computers, non-existent back then. So when we look at the middle school, today what we found during our Phase 2 educational assessment, we found that the teachers are teaching on teams, which is different than the way that the middle school was designed back then. It actually was a junior high school originally. It was designed as a junior high school. So changing to a middle school philosophy means that you have a collaborative group of teachers that are each teaching a subject and to a group of students. And so in these, what's reflected here in these colors are the teams. So red is one team, purple's another, yellow's another. So you can see that it's not really set up as to promote or support that sort of collaborative team teaching approach. So as a contrast, this is an example from Shelburne Community School, where they have a small learning community, grades grades 5 through 8. We renovated 2 wings there a couple years ago. And they did have the same sort of layout where it was, these double-loaded corridors with classrooms on both sides. And in talking to the teachers there, they also taught in a team approach. So we took the time to listen to them and came up with this concept of having 4 classrooms surround a learning commons. So all the students would come in here into this learning commons that acts as an extended learning space or extended learning area. And then this is like a wet project space. So this is shared between both houses. This is this learning commons. So students come in here, they might meet with all 4 classes in this central area here for a morning meeting, and then they go into their classes. But so what this does is helps to promote that sort of team teaching approach, this collaboration between teachers and collaboration for students to come out. And we'll get into this a little bit further in what we're planning to do here. So these are just big picture ideas when we're thinking about the new way of that students learn, and that what is expected to be that's expected to come out from students is critical thinkers and collaborators and engaged citizens. These are the adjectives that are used to describe the types of people that you want to graduate from schools today. It's not all about memorization of facts. And in fact, a recent exit poll from St. Mike's College in November of last year, they asked, what do you think are the most important skills for our young people to develop before they graduate? Proportionally sized, most common, 40 words of 334 responses. As you can see, that it's very similar type things that came directly from the community as to what they hope that students obtain when they graduate. So when we think about this in real terms, if someone's looking to design a build and one of these, a solar-powered car, it takes science, technology, engineering, art, math. All of these things go into designing and building one of these. So how do we, promote that in an environment that looks like this? This is the floor plan of the high school. So their engineering and technology department is down here on the first floor. Their art is on the second floor. Their math is over here, and science is over here. So how do these teachers all collaborate in order to help, do one of those projects? And in fact, for the art room, one has to go through the gym in order to get to the art. This was an addition added on in the 70s. And just the thought was to try and save space and have them go through the gym. Or you have to go downstairs and up. So if you're on the second floor, you have to go downstairs and up those stairs or go through the gym. It's things like that. The band is on the second floor, the auditorium is on the first floor. Things like that just make it very difficult for the teachers to teach that they want to teach. Another interesting thing about the high school that's makes it difficult for renovations is that each of these walls right here, these demising walls in between these classrooms, are all load-bearing masonry. So in order to renovate that, like if we were to try to do something similar to what we did at Shelburne, where we knocked all the walls down, all they had was metal stud framing, this would be extremely costly. And so, a lot of people ask, why can't we just renovate? And as you can see, there are multiple factors that are going into playing against trying to do that. So our future vision is to create hubs adjacent to related rooms. So science and math makes sense to have them together. Have an extended learning area where students can kind of go out and collaborate, where teachers can kind of talk to each other. Have art and technology and science, all of these things, Fab Lab, having all of these kind of close together so they can actually collaborate and work on projects together. Have the business and career center also in a space where they can have an extended learning area for collaboration. So this is an example of students trying to collaborate, at the middle school. The same thing, you can see in the halls here at the high school. And this is an example of, what a collaboration space might look like in a middle school or a high school, for that matter. Here we've got classrooms that have direct, supervision or, basically passive supervision into a space where they might send students to work on a project together. Maybe two teachers in this team might say, hey, let's think of a project that we can collaborate on, and our students can kind of work together, and they're working together out in this space. Or in one of these enclosed spaces, there's projectors, there's marker boards, all the tools necessary to support that education. And this is back at the Shelburne Community School. This is what that extended learning space looks like there. It's slightly different, but the same kind of idea. Students come out here, they can have morning meetings, a teacher can talk to them, or there could be 3 or 4 students out here. You could have a special educator pull out students and work on a project out here. These tables can fold and nest and roll out of the way quickly, and they can turn into a meeting space for all 4 classrooms. Again, transparency and relationships to other spaces. So this is what the high school cafeteria looks like, if anybody have not been here at lunchtime. As you can see, it's pretty crowded. It's very small for the number of students, and this just is an example of the overcrowding that the high school is experiencing. This is an example of what a cafeteria dining experience could be. This is a Heller upstairs. This is actually at a middle school that we designed, where there's different seating choices. You've got students that might sit on these stairs, but this is also like an impromptu exhibition space. So this type of stair is called a Heller up stair. So they're very wide, and you can have presentations here. So people can eat and relax, or take a time out from their class. This is different seating back here, where people, there might be students that are more introverted, and they don't want to be in a big, large space. So looking at the middle school, one of the major things that we found there is that about 50% of the building does not have any natural light. The library being one, number of classrooms, and even for the classrooms that do have natural light, they have very narrow windows, so there is actually very little light that comes into a normal classroom. We actually, for the last 2 weeks, we spent 2 full days at the middle school and 2 full days at the high school talking to students at both schools. And one of the significant things that we heard from the students was the lack of natural light, and really wanting to have natural light in a learning environment. And we heard that from both schools, primarily the middle school, but there were high school students that mentioned it as well. So when we look at the middle school, this is just a graphic depiction that shows the amount of spaces that do not have natural light. So this is the first floor, and this is the second floor. So 50% of the overall spaces of the building do not have any natural light. And this just references a study, and there's many of them online that you can find. But this is a study that was done by the Hishong Mahone group that actually was a driving study that was instituted into LEED and sustainable buildings as a requirement for obtaining points for LEED is to bring in natural light into the spaces. But what that study found was, basically a 25% improvement in test scores from naturally lit spaces. So, what does a science room look like in the future? You've got power that comes down, flexible tables on casters that can be moved around, and technology integrated. And there's a variety of spaces, so that there's a variety of things that are reviewed and gone over in science and technology. Wood shop, having this sort of fabrication. Years ago, Botech was taken out of a lot of the high schools, and so we're seeing that there's a new push for hands-on projects. Not every student is learns from reading a book or memorizing things. There are students that are good with their hands and can work with their hands, and that's the way that they learn best. And so having spaces like that available for that to continue. And just look at the existing phys ed space. This is the high school, the middle school. There's no natural light in here. In this auxiliary gym space where they have movement. And all the locker rooms are original from the 60s. The high school has an indoor track team, and I think there's about 120 students, more or less.
Yeah, a few more than that.
So that's over, I don't know, what percentage of the student population?
Been over 10% of
Yeah. So it's a significant number of students, and one of the things that students like about that is that, from what we've heard, is that it's a sport that's non-competitive. It's you're running against yourself and trying to beat your own time, and it's also a feeder sport into other sports: football, lacrosse, baseball, and so forth. So this is where they run through the hallways, and there is no other space for them. This is an example of some other high schools that have integrated these indoor track facilities into them, where they have basketball courts in the middle and a track that runs inside, so that it's an inviting space for students to come and get exercise, and it's looking at the whole student. So here's a few more examples. So these spaces that would normally be in a gym, these basketball courts, would get now put into this space. The locker rooms, the weight rooms, and so forth, that would all be put into this space. Movement studio with natural light. You can just see that it makes a difference just in looking at the photo of how does that make a student feel when they go into a space with no natural light versus a space with natural light. Here's a walking track that goes around the gym that's being considered for the middle school. Competition court with bleachers. Performing Arts Center, you've got an outstanding performing arts program here, theater program. Unfortunately, it's a very small theater. It's significantly undersized for the number of students that attend, especially the stage. There's no makeup or dressing areas at all. This is what high schools are doing, designing spaces to really support that performing arts. And there are students that's their passion. And so it's really all about supporting student investigation and student passion. Band rooms. So just kind of summarizing, the building layouts are obsolete for current educational programs, which is what we heard the way that they're currently teaching. The building, they're bumping into the building all over the place. They're currently trying to integrate STEAM, but they just don't have enough collaboration space for that. The cafeteria is undersized, lack of small group meeting space. As I mentioned, the gym athletic spaces are inadequate. The performing arts spaces are undersized. These are all important things that help support students moving forward to the, when we look at the next number of years. So with that, I'll pass it off to Lee to talk through the second half.
Great, thanks, Rob. We moved from phase one, which was analyzing the existing building infrastructure, and we started to look at space planning and development. What's the future look like? And I'm going to go through this stuff really quickly. There was kind of two passes that we took at this, and we looked at everything from renovating everything in place, which is some of these options over here on the left, both at the middle school and the high school. And what we ran into there, and Rob alluded to, is it's major renovations that we're considering. It's all of the infrastructure components. And so when that happens, if you can imagine your house or a building, when you have to take it down that far to get to those components, you're opening up walls, you're opening up ceilings. And to do that is just too much work to get accomplished over a summer. So you have to figure out, how do you accomplish this while the students are in the building? And when we went through this process, and you can tell by these diagrams, this is the middle school, and we broke it into 3 pieces. And what we do is we would have a contractor come in, take over 1/3 of the building. We'd have to move all the students out, and where do we put them? There's no other place in town to put those, so you roll them into trailers, portable classrooms. They're expensive, they're very disruptive to education, and they disappear at the end of the project, and the money that you paid for those goes away with the project. So we analyzed that from a duration and cost standpoint for both the high school and the middle school, and it was considerable. We looked at options that were renovations and additions, so these darker orange areas where we added additions. So we took some demolition of the existing building, trying to save what was good, and added new space. When we add new space, that's potential swing space to put students into, and so we went through that exercise from a cost standpoint, and how much did that cost? And we did it looking at limited improvements. We had a long laundry list of what the district would look to do with education in the future. And we said, well, let's take the top 4 priority items in each of those and run through this and cost it out. So that was the limited educational improvements. Then we took the whole list and said, we got to fix everything in a renovation. How do we accomplish that, and how much does it cost? And then all the way to new construction. So we analyzed all of that. The school board met and said it didn't make a lot of sense and didn't seem wise community investment to invest in just infrastructure and go through all of that disruption for years and not have any educational improvements to the space. This is a building that's going to be here for the next 50, 75 years. So this was an opportunity to make an impact. So the board at that point told us to move forward with analyzing the new construction options. So we went into the next phase to try and narrow our focus. And these are kind of some of the points that I just went. The buildings just are educationally obsolete for what the district is trying to do now and into the future. Rod mentioned some of the issues that we had with load-bearing walls, and it becomes difficult and costly to renovate that. The school board, again, came back and unanimously approved us to move forward with design work for a new middle school, high school option. Option 8, and that we started in March. So this is what we're calling kind of this pre-bond phase of investigation to come up with some more definitive information for the public to be able to make decisions on moving forward. There were 5 options that came out of this narrowed focus of all new construction options, and at the same time, we were still hanging on to what if we just renovate the middle school and try and look at something to try and reduce costs. So we had 5 options that we looked at. Concept 1 was all new construction. Concept 2 was renovation at the middle school. Concept 3 was renovation at the middle school and adding a new high school to it with no wellness center. There was a gym addition for the middle school, which is something that's really needed programmatically. And then we looked at kind of new configurations, placing them around the site to figure out how we would actually build this while students and everybody is here and up and operating. So you can see the costs are big, and they ranged from $184 million, which was the lowest option, and that was renovating the middle school and adding a new high school to it. And the big impact here were construction durations. And you can see, they vary wildly, but they're all very long durations. And what was interesting was that, at concept 5, which did have the highest price tag, had the shortest construction duration. And you would think that with the shortest construction duration, some of those costs would come down, and they did. But part of being able to build it that fast and where it was located on the site was we had to relocate some of the features that we were building on top of, namely your outdoor track facility. So there was a decision made that that seemed the most appropriate thing to look for, least disruption to education moving forward, and really is transformative to what it can do for the education moving forward. So this was the concept 5. Conceptually, it was a new middle school, a high school, and a wellness center. It was located, you can see the track underneath there. And you can imagine if we're coming in to build this, we'd build a construction fence right across the back of the site to separate the construction zone from ongoing school activities. Everything could function as normally. The contractors got everything, and they're working through it. So it was a 3-year, 8-month construction duration. Part of that was having to relocate fields and the outdoor track as well. When we looked at this, just so everybody understands what the durations were, even after the bond vote, there's still a whole bunch of design work to do, which is about 11 months before we're ready to go out to bid to construct all of this that we're proposing in the back of the site. It's about 32 months for the buildings. Then we would move the students from the existing buildings into the new buildings, which would free up the front of the site to do the demolition of the existing buildings and replace it with the fields and the parking. All in all, before the contractor is out of here, it would be 3 years and 8 months. So some of the factors that impacted making that decision was it best satisfied the educational goals of the district for the foreseeable future. It was very student-centered, and that was really important. Everything that we're looking at is kind of through the lens of how the student sees this finished product. The site, the best location on the site, safety is certainly a paramount concern in the age that we're living in now, and placing the building further back on the site creates longer sight lines for people that are coming into the site, which is important. It supports community use in a way because we can certainly close off portions of the building. You can shut the whole building off and open up the wellness center to the community or different aspects of it. Had the least amount of construction impact and cost versus the value-added long-term benefit to students in the community. Those were all factors that were weighed by the school board. So this is where we are, and I just want to couch some of this stuff. This is a work in progress, and as Rob mentioned, we've spent a lot of time in the schools over the last couple of weeks, and we've got a lot more work to do in the schools. So these plans are changing daily based on the information that we're gathering from students and staff. So this is a view of what we are, and we're going to talk to you guys a lot more detail when we break out into groups, but this is just an overview. Here's the new building on the back of the site, middle school, high school wellness center. There would be a new entrance drive coming up from Dorset Street. This is a bus loop in the front. This is a separate loop. There's a parent drop-off loop over here that comes back out, enter on the Dorset Street. These would both have to have lights to be able to make this work. We're moving the stadium down closer kind of to where it was a long time ago before the new track and field were built. There's tennis courts, practice fields. One of the big goals here was no net loss of play fields. So that's what we're trying to accomplish because it's very much needed on site. We've spread parking out around the building so it's convenient for access to different areas of the building. Just to give us a sense of scale, this is kind of an early massing model that we're just trying to look at right now to say what are the different volumes of spaces and how do they relate to the site. So this isn't actually a design. This is just kind of the floor plan extruded so we can understand how it fits on the site. But it gives you a sense of scale and how it fits back there. So I'm going to go a little bit into the floor plan, and I'll get into more detail when we have the breakout groups. But this is separate entrances. This is the middle school entrance. This is the high school entrance. They're connected at this kind of hinge knuckle point with a combined kitchen. The kitchen serves, there's a servery on this side for the high school dining commons. The middle school has a separate dining commons. We're trying to keep the autonomy of each of the schools, but at the same time realize some operational savings in the long run. Combined physical plant for housing the boiler room and all of the receiving. And then I'll start with the middle school. This is administration right at the front door, guidance, nurse's office. This is a large dining commons. There's a Heller upstairs. Rob showed you a picture of what that could look like before. These are teams, and you can see it's much different from the image that we showed you where they were scattered across the school. This is a thoughtful approach to be able to have the 4 related content classrooms surrounded by an extended learning area that you saw in some of those pictures. So the students and staff can go out in those spaces and collaborate. Special education is on team in each of them. So the special educator that's working with his team is housed right here. There's a teacher collaboration planning space directly on team so that teachers can work with each other every day instead of being scattered throughout, so they can actually talk about student success and performance. There's a gymnasium, which is about double the square footage of what's over at the gym in the middle school now. And if you've ever been in there trying to watch your kids play, you know there's no room to watch anything, and there's nowhere for the kids to run out except for hitting the wall once they get through the basketball. So it's a lot larger. There would actually be 2 full-size cross courts here and a larger court that we can put the long way with some bleachers that pull out. That's a much different configuration than what's over there now. Locker rooms, right and directly accessible to it. So in this plan right now, on the first floor, there are 3 teams. And I'll go show you what's up on the second floor of each of these before. Moving over to the high school, coming in the front entrance to high school, there's a security entrance here where you have to go through several vestibules and get buzzed in through a security screening before you can get access into the building. Large dining commons, there's a Heller upstairs here. This serves as kind of the central gathering spot. It's the kind of center spoke in the wheel where we've got a visual and performing arts hub. We've got a STEM hub, and then we've got kind of humanities and social studies and business and all of that kind of connected in a hub. You come through here, this is a wellness center in the back. And the wellness center, it's important to know, you won't see anything over here related to PE because we've taken everything that you would see in a normal high school, locker rooms, movement studios, the gym spaces. We took all that out and we said, we're going to put it all together to try and make the most efficient use of this space. Because if you have to build a box to go around the track and you don't put anything in there that's a program component, it's very efficient. So we're trying to make it as efficient as possible. You would come out at the same level as the high school onto the upper floor of this wellness center. If you've been out in the back next to that track, there's a big grade change right over on the eastern side of there. So we're actually dropping this down a level from here. So you're walking out into the top level. There's bleachers in here for 1,000 to be able to hold the entire student population for assemblies. There's 3 courts inside, full-size courts inside the 200-meter competition track. One of the courts would be a wood competition court, closest to the bleachers. And these other 2 would be more of a rubberized surface, so there'd be more multi-use, volleyball, basketball, pickleball, support the PE programs and community use. Certainly there's the track piece around that. There's locker rooms and team rooms down below here on the lower floor. It's a very centralized component to the educational piece of the high school. There is a theater. Is for 750 seats. I think you have about 420 right now. There would be 500 on the main floor, 250 up on a balcony level. Much different than the current layout is you've got all of the related spaces that engage with the theater directly adjacent. So band to be able to take equipment from the band rooms and the pianos and the big drums over to the stage with lots of large double doors to be able to get through there. Scene shop storage, the wood tech shop that you saw some pictures of, completely integrated with an art flex lab and a STEM fabrication studio. So we've put this in a very visible spot intentionally to try and put that student learning on display and that collaboration on display. There's a black box theater here that also doubles as the choral room. Art classrooms with good north light. Back here, there's a department center, so the teachers that are working as part of the visual and performing arts can all collaborate together. Moving into these classroom wings, these are 3-story classroom wings, and they're similar on each floor. This would be science labs and prep rooms and math classrooms, so it's that kind of bringing the STEAM together. This is the nurse's office, kind of central on the first floor, located between wellness and easy access in and out from the administrative areas. Just looking at the middle school, I'll skip up. This is a blow up of that first floor. One of the things that we are trying to look at in all of the development of these plans is room for future expansion. If enrollment grows, thoughtful placement of where you could put additions in a cost-effective way, so it's not kind of like this building was when it was added to over the years and it ends up being a big kind of Frankenstein thing and you're trying to get to the art room and you have to go through tunnels and hallways and leap over things. The second floor of the middle school, again, these are these team arrangements. One of these teams is on the upper floor is art, band, and chorus. Those are usually in taller spaces, so we put that on the second floor because we've got another general classroom team down below that's got a lower height. These two wings extend up to the third floor. You come up the Heller upstairs, right up to the Library Media Center. Multimedia time lab and a TV studio that have connection to the library. They're also at the knuckle between the high school, so the high school has an opportunity to use, some of these spaces, mentorship opportunities for the students at the high school and vice versa. Up on the third floor, there is a third floor classroom wing with these two teams that are up here that kind of complete the configuration. Moving over to the high school, I went through the first floor, so we'll skip up to the second floor. When you go up from the dining commons up to Heller upstairs, you're walking immediately into the first floor of the media center. We're actually going to spread that over 2 floors. So this media center, when you come up to the top of the stairs, this is still more of a collaborative space. It's going to have some noise in it, and the students are going to be working together. When we get up to the third floor, that's kind of the quiet area of the media center. Similar classroom arrangement down here, and one important thing is we have, you'll see these numbers 1 and 2, those are different sized classrooms because it's not one classroom fits all. It's not a really good flexibility use of space. Sometimes you have AP classes that'll have an enrollment of 8 or 10 students. Doesn't make efficient sense to put those in a classroom that was designed for 24. So we have different sized classrooms in different areas to be able to absorb those enrollment changes. This is the balcony level of the auditorium. This is the business, career, and big picture hub together, right up at the top of the dining commons. You look over down into that dining commons area. Up on the third floor, here's that upper part of the media center. And again, this is still science and math and the other end of the 3-story wing. And we can talk about this stuff in more detail. This is that lower, this is when we walk out of the high school. You'd walk through the hallway and you can walk down the bleachers. There's stairs on each side. We've got weight and cardio and movement studios, bathrooms, concession. The main floor, which is down a level, just has all of those spaces that we talked about with separate athletic locker rooms for PE programs and athletic locker rooms for the sports programs as well. Outside of the plans, stuff that we're thinking about right now, and these are some of the questions that we're going to want to ask you guys later, is sustainability goals. We think it's very important if we're going to make an investment like this that we're making an investment in a building that's going to be sustainable and very energy efficient. Our goals, our minimum goal is a LEED certified project, and I think that we can advance that cause as we get through. The building is being designed right now as net zero energy ready. All the demolition activities will be sorted so they go through recycling to divert it from landfills. We've had 96% of the waste recycling diverted from landfills on our previous projects that are LEED certified. The building is being designed to be solar ready, and that's a big component of a net zero building. Low flow plumbing fixtures, efficient HVAC system, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. A very high performance building envelope with lots of insulation, something that's really almost non-existent in both of these buildings right now. They're certainly energy hogs, and long term that has some operational cost implications. The important piece is we're developing our cost estimates to date and continuing forward with all of these goals in mind. So it's not something that we're not thinking of and we're going to have to add on in the future. Our approach to net zero energy, and this is the approach that most designers are taking on buildings today to get to this, is initially got to reduce the demand, right size the equipment, energy that's using energy and electricity, reduce loads, improve the building shell, harvest site energy, the way we orient the building, the way we orient the classrooms, and the orientation to make maximum use of natural daylighting opportunities. Efficiency, reducing loads, we got to maximize the equipment that we use. Efficient operations and maintenance. Building commissioning is really important and needs to be designed into this, and certainly renewable energy. We got to generate enough to be able to take up what we're using. It's not all about energy and fossil fuel consumption. The LEED project is really a holistic approach to creating an environment that's better for the occupants and is better for the environment. So there's lots of different things that we have to look through. These are some of the items, and I'm not going to go through all of these with you, but these are some of the LEED checklist items, and these are all things we're thinking of as we're putting this design together. One of the things that our engineers are working on right now is a baseline heating and ventilating system, and what does that look like, and what are the operational costs and energy model and carbon impacts of this. We've got two main options we're looking at right now. One is to be completely carbon neutral and free of fossil fuel use, so it would be mostly solar, and we're going to use electric heat pumps, geothermal. So we're in the process of pricing that right now and doing some energy modeling to see what the results are. Option 2 is similar. It's a geothermal water-cooled heat recovery system, but it's a hybrid. It does have natural gas as a gas-fired redundant boiling heating system. So these are things that we'll be able to report back to you on soon with some costs and the return on the investment of those, but just wanted to give you an update on what we're looking at. Next steps, here we are in September at our community meeting. We're going to be doing this again in October. We have several school board meetings too that are obviously public meetings that we're going to be reporting our progress on. We're very interested in getting community input. As we've stated, we've been spending a lot of time in the schools to try and solicit information and feedback from students and staff that's going to help influence and direct our design. The community is obviously a very important aspect of this, and we're trying to get out as much information as we can and answer questions as they come up. In November, we're planning on having our design package ready to go to a cost estimator. And that's really what's driving this, is we want to be able to come back and show you, here's the design, here's how much it costs, here's the energy modeling, operational cost, for the perceived future. And that's what we'd be moving to bond vote with. The district is currently also out soliciting to hire a construction management firm as a check on our cost estimates. When we would get together, they're going to independently estimate it from ours. We're going to get together and reconcile those, so we're going to be pretty confident with the number that we're sharing with you to move forward to a bond vote. The month of December will be us kind of finishing up this initial design work to be able to give you guys another update about what the plans look like and what the building looks like and some of the materials that we're thinking about. And from December to March, and we'll really be out in the community trying to get as much information as we can. Post vote, just to kind of know what the timing looks like. There's still a lot of design work to do. As I mentioned before, it's about 11 months worth. We're in this kind of schematic design phase right now. We're going to have some work to do after a bond vote too to finish that phase. There's about another 5 or 6 months of design development. Most of the decisions get made at that point, and then we kind of really have to kind of spin our web to get our drawings done and our specifications so we can get those ready to go out to bid to contractors. So that's kind of the timing. We want to break you guys out into 2 different groups right now, and we can walk you through the plans in a little bit more detail in a little bit smaller setting and answer some of your questions that you may have. We're interested in your reaction to some of our initial thoughts on where the design is going right now. We have some boards set up that have some generalized aesthetic imagery of school buildings, and we're trying to get a sense. This isn't our building, this is the community's building, and we're really trying to figure out, what do you guys want this to look like? So we have lots of different flavors of design styles. We're gonna give you guys some stickers, some green ones and some red ones, stuff you don't like versus stuff that you do like. And we're gonna see if we can find some common thread out of all of this between these next 2 community input meetings. So, and we'll report out kind of what we heard from these 2 groups back to the larger group at the end of this. So that's where we are right now. And right now, if we could move over, you can kind of see where the boards are set up over here. And if we can kind of divide ourselves up evenly, if we don't, we'll try and move a couple of people around, but thank you.